Priya ma'am. She will
Okay.
she will host the entire sessions today. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
मैं वीडियो का क्या रहा है वीडियो की साइज कितनी बड़ी है आ जाएगी मेरे पे क्योंकि 3 वीडियो बता रहे हो आप ये तो यूट्यूब से चलेगा ना वही तो डायरेक्ट यूट्यूब से चलेगा तो देखिए वो तो यूट्यूब की लिंक है ना
Good morning, everybody.
Ma'am, we are starting the session. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay.
Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to all the participants, guests, and our respected speakers. It's such a pleasure to see so many enthusiastic faces gathered here today for this wonderful learning experience. Today's workshop is not just about sharing knowledge, it is about learning, interacting, and growing together. We hope by the end of this session, you will take away insights that will truly make a difference in your journey. So, without any further delay, let's officially.
संजय को बुला लेना एक बार. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, so the as all the participants must be knowing, today the workshop is called Le Festival de la Francophonie, la langue française à la fête. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So actually, the idea is to tell you that how French language became in itself a melting point of diverse population experiences, so much so that it has formed itself, transformed itself into a space for dance for humanity and became a festivity in itself. So the session is entitled Le Festival de la Francophonie, la langue française à la fête. So, right? Let me see if I can share. शेयर हो जाएगा संजय? नहीं.
शेयर हाँ शेयर हो चुका है.
कहाँ?
शेयरिंग चल रही है अभी. शेयरिंग है.
स्टॉप शेयर. शेयर कर रहे हूँ.
कौन सी स्क्रीन शेयर?
ये है.
जी शेयरिंग.
यहाँ रहो. ये पूरा कर दो. लंबा नहीं हो रहा है. Okay, let me continue. IT support is with me, who is helping me. So basically, I will be talking about the French language, which has turned itself into a space for sharing, for creativity, and for human experience. I will be sharing with you. I cannot see. Okay.
Ma'am, can you go for the larger view for slide?
Yeah,
slides?
IT is with me, so it's helping me out. So I'll be talking about some successful stories about individuals who have already made themselves felt as global authors and individuals who have done films, documentaries, who are working as activists for their own rights. So with this, I would like to share just one slide, this one. This one we can share. Can you tell me if you can see it? Can you see?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, तो
Ma'am, can you do it in full screen?
full screen कर दो उसको.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It's okay now, ma'am. Thank you. On peut pas vous écouter, madame.
Ma'am, you
Madame,
are...
on ne peut pas vous écouter.
Please unmute yourself, ma'am. You are on mute, ma'am.
Vous êtes mute, madame.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, you're not audible. Ma'am, please unmute.
Vous
Ma'am-
n'êtes pas audible, madame.
No, no, no,
Non,
ma'am.
non, non, pas encore, madame.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Perfect.
Okay. So let's go to the slide. Slide पे जाइए. Sharing नहीं है. Okay. So if you can hear me, so things are sorted out. But फिर भी I'll ask IT support to be with me. Share में है. Okay. So I just want to share with all the students how French language is being used by multiple people and nations. So if you look at it, you can find that Asia and Oceania, 10% of the population speaks this language. South America, 5%. North America, 10%, and 20% is Europe. Whereas 55% of the African population speaks French. So when we talk about the Francophonie, quote unquote, it actually talks about all these people, historical, geographical, and geopolitical convergences. So these all people, including us, you can see Asia, we speak the French language and we use it in various ways. So the French language expresses the shared experiences of many cutting across the frontiers of France herself. So not only in France, in the 5 continents, this language is spoken. And when we talk about Francophonie, it is the connection or connecting the people of 5 continents and their experiences and their achievements. So today, I will be talking about some of these voices which are majorly heard today. Okay, the first person is Velibor Kulik. Now he's actually having a difficult trajectory. So he fled. He is Bosnian. He's a Bosnian author who, during the violent clashes of the Balkan Wars, who joined the army, but after that he fled the country and took shelter in France. So Velibor Kulik actually reinvented himself with the French language. He was previously an author, but he was writing in Croatian. But when this, the violent war broke out, he was enrolled in the army, but he soon left the army and joined you know, uh, came to France in Rennes, which is to the west of France, and he started a new life. He knew very little about French, but he took the challenge and he started writing in French language. And particularly, I'll be talking about his famous book, Manual of Exile, Manuel d'Exil, where he talks of survival in an alien land. So France is not his land, but he got political asylum in France, and he taught, he self-taught. I mean, he taught himself the language to an extent that he today is celebrated as a very famous author writing in French. So, uh, at around, I think, 28 years of age, he came to France and then he carved out a living, not only a living, but also he is a famous writer writing in France today. Uh, so, so French here is a language of rebirth. See, he says that j'ai perdu une langue, j'en ai gagné une autre, which means, literally translated, that I lost a language, but I gained another language. And this gave me the possibility of surviving, but also expressing myself globally, right? So, French here, as I just told, is a language of rebirth. So, in celebrating colleague, the Francophony, when you talk about Francophone voice, he is one of the celebrated voices. Next, I'll be talking about Gail Fay. Now, Gail Fay also was exiled. He was born of a, French father, but in Rwanda, in Burundi, more particularly, and his mother was Rwandan. Now, he spent a happy childhood life, but at 13 years of age, he had to move to France. Why? Because there was violent, war. You must be knowing or may not be knowing, the uh, genocide broke out between Hutu and Tutsi tribes. And it turned out so violent that Gail Fay, along with his family, has to move to France. So, why Gail Fay? When we talk about festivity of French language, because his writings and songs is, putting to the fore not only the French language, but also the African languages such as uh, Kirundi, and Saheli. So I would, so both this story is a story of exile. Uh, Gail Fay wrote his famous novel called A Small Country. And his music embodied the rhythm and the emotion of the Francophone African world. Whereas Velibor Kolik brings a lot of, you know, humor, we find Gail Fay does the same. So he is not only an author, but also a rapper, a musician. So many things put into one. So I would ask IT support to play Gail Fay video to all the participants. Should I stop sharing? Is it possible? Okay, right. Okay. So can you share the video of Gail Fay?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, so I've just stopped shared. So both are the stories of exile, and we can find out that both of them through the through French language established themselves. Uh, Petit Pays and many other stories are being written in French by Gail Fay, who is an African, a Rwandan, and he made a career out of it. Similarly, we find Velibor Kolik, who had a difficult time because he was not knowing the language, but then he mastered it to an extent that today he is a celebrated author. I'd like to have IT playing the video of Gail Fay, where in his music you will find Kirundi language as well as Swahili language. If not possible, then is it possible? Then I'll move on.
Ma'am, we don't have videos. We have?
Already sent.
Video है हमारे पास,
Gail Fay, you have to play.
Ma'am, we are trying from our side.
Okay, right.
YouTube से
So
pic
basic
करो.
idea is to show you how French language is being mixed with local dialects of the author, right? So we find Croatian influence also in Velibor Kolik's writing, whereas we find Kirundi dialect uh, and culture mixed with the French language.
व्हाट्सएप लॉगिन करना है, आप 2 मिनट शेयर करेंगे व्हाट्सएप पे।
Acha, is there a problem?
Ma'am, we are trying to play video directly from YouTube.
Yeah, you can. You have to share it. You have to share and then you can play. Or should I? Okay. Okay, right. If you are finding it a problem, so let me see if I can.
ऑडियो नहीं जाएगा यहाँ से.
वही तो अभी वो सिटी वहां पे ना मैं कंट्रोल तो वहां से वैसे आके हां मेरी मदद है
Is it okay? Right. This is the story of two exiled authors who today have already made their presence felt in the Francophonie world. Whereas I'll be also talking about Rokhaya Diallo. Okay, maybe they can do it.
Ma'am, audio, can you listen the song? We have played on YouTube.
But you didn't put the sound.
No, it is not. नहीं.
आपको sound off है आपका. Sound off है. अब देखो नीचे क्रॉस दिखा रहे हैं. आप उसको शेयर करिए and you have to put the sound also. Sound share button on Zoom link. Yeah.
Sound is not.
अब नीचे क्रॉस दिखा रही है अब देखो. You have to क्रॉस दिखा रही है. बेटा. अब नीचे देखो क्रॉस दिखा रही है. IT सपोर्ट. साउंड को ऑन करो. So I think IT has a problem with Zoom link. आपको Okay, I think I will carry on because it's very easy actually. It's not difficult. You just share it and put on the sound button.
Ma'am, actually, they have connected two laptops. So one is from control room and one is from this podium. That's why it is taking problem.
एक minute.
Ma'am, it's simple. Actually, na there is a sound say button on Zoom link.
तो Zoom link में होता है बेटा.
यस मैम. एक्चुअल में दूसरा बटन होता है मैम. आप मोर वाले ऑप्शन में जाइए. जूम पे मोर वाला ऑप्शन है. मोर पे ना मीटिंग सेटिंग ऑप्शन में ना आपको ऑडियो सेटिंग मिलेगा.
ये आपको करना है. पवन यहाँ आ जाओ. पवन मैं तो गई. यहाँ आ जाओ.
No, you have muted the sound. How it will be? Unmute. Sir, please unmute. Is it audible?
ऑडिबल तो आपको करना है. Okay, it's not audible. It's not audible. Just wait. You unshare.
Ma'am, Mobin this side, I'm sharing from my side. You can stop your share.
I have already stopped sharing. Yeah, now it's coming.
Une feuille et un stylo apaisent mes délires d'insomniaque loin dans mon
The
exil.
photo is not there. Video is not there.
Yes, ma'am.
वो क्या जरूरी है मैम वो बोल के आप फोन उठाने और किसी को तो भेजो
Oh,
तो कह के आज बताओ प्रॉब्लम बीच में आ सकती है यार
yeah, now it's all right.
Gaugu gatoyi, gaugu kaniniya, warapfunwe ni wapfuye, waragowe ni wagoka, gaugu gatoyi, gaugu kaniniya.
Une feuille et un stylo apaisent mes délires d'insomniaque, loin dans mon exil, petit pays d'Afrique des Grands Lacs. Remémorer ma vie naguère avant la guerre, trimant pour me rappeler mes sensations sans rapatriement. Petit pays, je t'envoie cette carte postale, ma rose, mon pétale, mon cristal, ma terre natale. Ça fait longtemps les jardins de Bougainvilliers, souvenirs enfermés dans la poussière d'un bouquin plié. Sous le soleil, les toits de tôle scintillent, les paysans défrichent la terre en mettant le feu sur des brindilles. Voyez mon existence avait bien commencé, j'aimerais recommencer depuis le début, mais tu sais comment c'est. Et nous voilà perdus dans les rues de Saint-Denis. Avant qu'on soit sénile, on ira vivre à Guissény. On fera trembler le sol comme les grondements de nos volcans. À leur petit pays, loin de la guerre, on s'envole quand
Gaugu gatoyi, gaugu kaniniya, warapfunwe ni wapfuye, waragowe ni wagoka, gaugu gatoyi, gaugu kaniniya.
Petit bout d'Afrique, perché en altitude, je doute de mes amours, tu resteras ma certitude. Réputation recouverte d'un linceul, petit pays pendant 3 mois, tout le monde t'a laissé seul. J'avoue, j'ai plaidé coupable de voyir quand tous les projecteurs étaient tournés vers le Zaïre. Il fallait reconstruire mon petit pays sur des ossements, des fosses communes et puis nos cauchemars incessants. Petit pays, te faire sourire sera ma rédemption, je t'offrirai ma vie, à commencer par cette chanson. L'écriture m'a soigné quand je partais en vrille, seulement laisse-moi pleurer quand arrivera ce maudit mois d'avril. Tu m'as appris le pardon pour que je fasse peau neuve, petit pays. Dans l'ombre, le diable continue ses manœuvres. Tu veux vivre malgré les cauchemars qui te hantent. Je suis semence d'exil, d'un résidu d'étoiles filantes.
okay, that
Gaugu
is
gatoyi, gaugu kaniniya, warapfunwe ni wapfuye, waragowe ni wagoka, gaugu gatoyi,
so basically what you can see the French music that he's a rapper, he's a very famous rapper and a musician as well as an author. So basically what you can find is the French is mingled with his own culture, with his memories of childhood, right? So let me come to the other authors. May I ask to stop share? So I'll be talking about two more, authors. Both of them are ladies. One is Rukhaya Diallo. Rukhaya Diallo. And another person is Sumana Sinha. Both of them are from France. Now, many of you, particularly the students who are participating, often we have an idea that Europe belonged to the whites. So if we visualize France, we visualize France that belongs to the white people. But actually, this is not the case. For a long time, France has many people from Africa, from Asia, and many other parts of the globe. So it's not at all white the way we imagine it. So Rukhaya Diallo, I'll be talking about. She is a young Francophone author. She's a journalist, filmmaker, a critical and a critic as well as an activist. Okay, so these all dimensions she brings into the Francophonie, modern Francophonie. So for her, French is a tool of inclusion, awareness, and freedom. Right? So what is very interesting is that she tells that she's a fourth generation immigrant and who is actually French by birth, but she regrets that the French infrastructure do not allow, the Black or the brown people, because today we do not say black, the colored people, and do not invite them to share mutually the infrastructure of plants. For example, Ruqya, in her interviews, I will be shortly asking IT to share Ruqya's, video as well. So what she is saying is that if you go to a saloon for haircut, uh, they do not know how to help the Africans, right? So they have to go to the ethnic parlors made exclusively for the Africans. And similarly, uh, in one of the videos, she is talking about a computer that can face scan. It cannot face scan the colored people. It can only face scan the whites. So these are the reality. And Rokia Diallo is talking about this reality in a big way. She's talking about how the colored people are still a minority today in 2025 because they cannot, they are not accepted as such in the world of the, whites. So this is very important to talk about Diallo. I'll be talking about another person who is from India itself. Two more person. One is Sumana Sinha, who is from Calcutta and who is today a big name. You must be knowing Sumana Sinha is a celebrated author in French with having French expression, as well as we have Ari Gauthier, who is from Pondicherry, India. So two Indians will be also integrated in my talk. Ari Gauthier, who is actually a famous name today, and he is born in Madagascar, but raised in Pondicherry. So his language is a Creole language, French mixed with Tamil language. So both of them I'll be talking. So talking about Ruqayya, I'll ask, if possible, IT to play the video. It's just 1 minute, I think. Can IT do that?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. So, Ruqayya, in her essays and documentation, very famous filmmaker today, is questioning what is truly means to be a French, right? So she belongs to Senegal, born of Senegal and Senegalese and French parents. And she reminds us that the Francophone world is not just a spectacle of harmony. It is also an invitation to listen to silenced voices and expand the meaning of Frenchness, right? So I'd love to have our participants watch the video of Kaya. Should I continue or in play? I can understand the technical, glitches because we are not yet so comfortable.
Yes, ma'am, please.
But we are trying. That is what we can do. This time the video should be hard also. Right? Should I talk about Sumana or should I wait till you play the video? Sumana is Bengali, who actually joined France by virtue of learning the language when she was very young, 21-year-old, started learning French. And at the age of 35, she published her first book in in French, right? And all the authors, all the voices that you are hearing, they have received several awards and recognitions. So these are the success stories. Idea is to tell the young participants that French language gives us space, the foreign language gives us space to express yourself. There is a lot of opportunity for everyone to carve out a space. And our budding scholars, of course. Yes. Should I continue?
Ma'am, it would be great if you can play from your side because we are able to connect both the things.
But you could do it last time.
No,
Okay.
last. Yes.
Right. So, should I play or should I try? Or will you try? Because that is what Disha told me that you will be playing the. If not, then I'll try.
Ma'am, the problem is happening. We are trying to play the video.
Rukaya.
Audio is
Rukaya Diallo.
yes, but the
It will play. Try, don't be.
it is we can listen to the audio video both. We can see the video, we can listen to the audio.
Yeah, but you have to share and do it.
Okay,
Share
okay.
and do it.
I am sharing from YouTube. We are trying to share it from YouTube, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, the same as previous. So Rukha is basically talking about her minority existence. Even the modern Francophonie is showing this, problem, and she's very vocal about it. Sumana Sinha, on the other hand, as I was telling you, she is a known author today, and she brings in her writing India and France, literature and life, irony and harmony linked together. Ari Gautier, on the other hand, also, as I told you, is another figure from India. Can you help me play some videos here? Come. Because they are finding it. So I'm sharing, I'm trying. इसको share करना है, and it is in my.
Ma'am, we are sharing. Just wait for a minute. Our IT team is trying to share the video. You?
I'm a writer. I'm a French writer. I was born in India, so I started writing in my mother tongue. And when I was 31, I published my first novel in French. And it's been, 12, 13, 15 years I'm writing in French.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself. You're not audible.
It's not necessary for me to speak. You play the video. You play the video, don't stop it, because the participants.
It's a passionate love relationship with the French language, because as an Indian, I was born and brought up with very British and very English language mind setup. So learning French, writing in French, reading French writers, it was like opening totally a new window, or so many windows, and have a different perspective for life. And when you learn a foreign language and you start living that language, the perception of the life changes itself. You don't live your life in the same way when you live it in a different language, when you foreign language. There is one particular travel story was being written and published every Sunday by a famous poet and novelist Bengali, Sunil Gangopadhyay, and it was called In the Land of Poetry, in the Land of Painting. That is France. That's what people think in India. This is France, is the land of poetry and literature. When I was 14 years old, I thought maybe, yeah, that's the place for me. But later on, when I studied and it was going really well, and I got encouraged by my professors, by myself, and somehow I felt like, for so many reasons, I cannot really develop here in just in short interview. I have written a book which is coming out on 3rd November. It's about how and why I am so much in love with the French language and how my life and myself I have changed because of the French language. Yeah, be brave and don't be afraid, and just go ahead, because behind every single word, every single sentence, there's a new life, there's a new sensation is waiting for you. So it's never a loss. You never lose your mother tongue when you learn a foreign language. You even understand better your own mother tongue, your own personal culture, when you learn a foreign language, a foreign culture. So that's not only a linguistical enrichment, that's a personal, intellectual, spiritual enrichment. There are so many things are happening. Institut Français, Alliance Française, Bureau du Livre, there are Centre National du Livre. There are so many programs to help out young students, writers, painters, film directors, documentary film directors also. There are so many things French government offer as subsidies and scholarships and encouragement. So just take advantage of it and yeah, be happy. Je dis ma foi en ce moment beaucoup. Je pense que comme je suis athée,
We can
j'aime
stop
pas dire
this
mon Dieu, je
video.
n'aime
I
pas me
think
référer à
you
une
can
croyance.
stop the video.
Yes, sir, please pause the video.
Okay, thank you. So obviously, you can see these are the living examples of successful people, not only from your own India. You can see these are the people who are, making a name, expressing themselves, and building a career that is worth having, right, students? So you can unshare also, if possible. Rukia's video, maybe you could play, or maybe you can. I've already said that Francophonie is not all about harmony. There is also several question marks whether, these people who are French, who are born French, who are the fourth generation immigrants in France, they are feeling discriminated. So that too should be worked upon. Kindly unshare so that I have come to mind. Can you unshare?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's it. That's the idea. I hope uh, the video itself has told you that from the very beginning, yesterday starting, we talked about Francophonie, we talked about food, festivals, many, many things. But Francophonie is also a shared space. It is evolving, it is reinventing, changing, giving place to every voices. So Festival of the Francophonie, le Festival de la Francophonie, or the Francophonie Festival, celebrates a simple yet profound truth. To speak French is to belong to a community that is constantly changing and reinventing. itself. So through the journeys of these people, the second slide that I shared with you, Veli Berkolik, Gail Fay, Rukhaya Diallo, Sumana Sinha, Ari Gauthier. These are some of the names. There are so many more. Okay, that should inspire the young generation of students, teachers, researchers to make a career there. So we see French as an open festival, a crossroads where cultures meet, dreams collide, and creativity blooms. Right? Each of these people, each of these individuals, successful individuals, they teaches us that French is not the property of any one nation, but a living art of coexistence, a space where we can write, sing, question, love. To live and celebrate French, then, is to keep this music alive in classrooms, stages, in every heart that dares to imagine in another language. So that's it. I find students are living, maybe they have a class.
Ma'am, they have another second lecture, so the second lecture people will join shortly with us. And those who have
Okay.
registered in, they
So
are.
actually, you can ask them because I have ended. If there are questions, I'll take them.
Uh,
Uh,
Students,
mhm.
have any questions, you can ask,
Or any teachers, it's
or
open
even
to
teachers
everyone.
also. If you have any question, you can ask.
Um,
Online participants, if you have any question,
they can even write in the chat box.
yes.
Right. So if not, then I will okay, podium. Okay.
Online participants, do you have any question?
have a question.
Right. Can you
Good
give?
morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, Sonakshi.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am, for highlighting the importance of the French language. And I would like to ask that when I was studying post-colonial literature and art, so we came across a text by Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth. So, La Dame de la Terre, I think that's the French translation of that. So we studied that how the French, they kind of colonized Africa and all that.
Right.
So
Yes,
when
Sonakshi.
it comes to me, like I am actually more into Spanish, and I kind of
What is your
am not in.
question?
Yeah, my question is that uh, do you think that in the International Court of Justice they should include other languages instead of just Spanish and English? Sorry, French and English?
So you were talking about things that is much beyond, my area. But basically, when you talk about post-colonial and when you talk about France Fanon, obviously there is a contradiction, right? We are living in a post-colonial world wherein we can talk about Rukhya Diallo, we can talk about many others who are claiming more for themselves, right? France Fanon, when he was writing, I mean, colonization was going on, and he was talking of wretched of the art because the colonized people they didn't have a voice. So that is where I find a contradiction. So you should be clear about what you were saying. So post-colonial world, today we are in post-colonial. In fact, all these authors, they are writing in the post-colonial space. Now talking about why French is there and Spanish is, I think Spanish is very much there in the international forum. These are very important international languages, along with German, along with other languages. So
Yeah,
I cannot
and also,
answer that why Spanish is not given the same, status as French, or why French is not given the same status as Chinese. Chinese is the most spoken language even before French. So French is actually having the third position. So these are all, as in the beginning, very beginning, I was telling you that there are various reasons why French is spoken in 5 continents. This is geopolitical reasons as well as colonization. French colonization is the first important thing, but also, geographical proximity. Like if you talk about Luxembourg, if you talk about Belgium, they speak the language, Switzerland. They speak the language because it is the geographical proximity. They share the same frontier, right? So colonization, then geopolitical, this Africa, 55% I showed in the first slide, they speak French language. Why? Because they were colonized. And if you talk about Africa, Africa is not only colonized by the French, colonized by the Spanish also, colonized by many other international, America, Germany, Belgium. So why? Because of their mineral resources. I mean, do not want to expand it, but we have to know the world, and post-colonial is just not a word. It has to be felt and lived. Similarly, the language has to be felt and lived, right? That's it from my side. Yeah. So, but I'm very glad that a student of Spanish language also participating in this Francophone event. Thank you. I think we can, no questions then. Any more questions, or should you go to the next speaker because he must be waiting also?
Any more questions? Offline participants, you have any question?
Or we can take it after the talk, because, right? So I'll take a leave. Thank you so much, organizers, and also the anchor and students, of course. So I'll take a leave.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this insightful session on Francophone voices. Our students got to know about 2 Indian Francophone authors. So
As well.
Yes,
There
ma'am.
are many.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
We are moving to our next online speaker. Nilanjan sir, are you there? Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, now it is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker of the day, Nilanjan sir. He is a passionate and a dedicated educator in the field of French language and culture. With his vast experience in teaching and love for the Francophone world, he has inspired countless students to explore the beauty of French culture and language beyond the textbook. So, please, over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. I think I'm visible, I'm audible. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you see, as I have already, I think, sent you the topic of my talk today, Festival Pan-Africain, the Pan-African Festival of 1969, which was held in the capital of Algeria, Algiers. So this is a Francophone festival that I'll be talking about. Now, I think my previous speaker, Professor Deepa Chakraborty, has already already set the stage of defining with examples the expansion of the French language and culture across countries, across continents, because of which we find now authors, thinkers, philosophers, historians coming from various countries which not necessarily speak the French language, and yet those countries have produced, eminent scholars, authors, and intellectuals who express themselves in. So, as Professor Deepa Chakraborty has just now mentioned that, it's now shared kind of heritage, French language and culture. It's a shared heritage which bears testimony to that extension of French language beyond the hexagonal frontier. As you know, that France is often defined as a hexagon because of its form, because of its structure, which looks like a hexagon. Now, in fact, taking clue from that expansion of French language and culture, I would like to mention about somebody whom you know, Onésime Reclus, who is the person who invented this expression Francophonie. Onésime Reclus, he is basically in any documents, video or audio, or written documents on internet, you will find him to be the inventor of this expression Francophonie. But you may not know that Onésime Reclus, in fact, in his book, in a book called Lâchons l'Asie, prenons l'Afrique, means let's leave Asia and let's take Africa. So what does it mean, lâchons, l'Asie et prenons l'Afrique? So he wanted to say that, well, French language, in its extensive form, will not have much future in a continent like Asia, where you have very ancient civilizations like Indian civilization, Chinese civilization, Japanese civilizations, where there will be a very big competition and rivalry between the French language and those languages and cultures which have been continuing for thousands of years. But Africa probably would be a proper place where the French language could be reinvented in a very prolific way. Because Onésime Reclus, he understood that many of the African cultures have had oral tradition. They didn't have written form of language, and so it will be easier for French to establish itself as a dominating language, because as you know that with the progress of centuries, with the progress of technology, with the progress of the modernity, ultimately the written culture has become more and more important, and ultimately had sidelined the oral cultures. So taking into consideration this kind of scenario, Onésime Reclus, he thought that French language had its future, it's a bright future, not in Asia but in Africa. And moreover, Onésime Reclus, he was a little bit pessimistic about the future of French language in Europe as well, because as you know that this colonial expansion, it happened in the later decades of the 19th century, after 1880s. And by that time, the France had suffered a very humiliating loss in the hands of the Germans in the Franco-Prussian War. When Napoleon III was the king of, was the emperor and the president of, then the president first and then the emperor of France. He was a very modest, very democratic at the beginning of his career, but he grew into a very big dictator, and because of whom Victor Hugo had to exile himself. And Victor Hugo only came back to France after Napoleon III was dethroned out of power in the aftermath of Franco-Prussian War, where he was defeated by the Germans. So in that kind of scenario, Onésime Reclus, when he looked back that kind of humiliating defeat in the hands of the Germans, humiliating defeat of France in the hands of the Germans, he thought that probably the French language, which was the big language of culture, diplomacy in the previous centuries, will be a moribund language, language which will die. And other rivals like English, German, probably Spanish, would dominate French, and sideline it in Europe. So Onesime Roku had that kind of view, and he thought that Africa is the place where French language would be having a new lease of life and would reinvent itself, and would expand, and would ultimately end up by becoming the language of all Africans. Although Africa doesn't belong to only the French colonizers. There are English, there is English, there's Portuguese, Spanish. It's a divided. The African territory was divided under the domination of all these, rival colonizing powers of the 19th century. Okay, so so when we talk about festivals, when we talk about any kind of rituals, normally we have the definition of a festival is that the festival is that authentic expression of a culture, culture which is located in a particular place, in a particular geographical space, and culture by perpetuating the tradition, the heritage, the patrimony, the collective memory of a particular people, of a particular race, ultimately is an authentic expression of that heritage. And the festivals, they take place years after years. When we talk about the major festivals, we are not quite sure about when it originated. Sometimes there are very controversial opinions about how and when did it originate. It's so old. The festivals are so old. So from the time immemorial, festivals have always been expressing that authentic identity of the people, and of a people of a particular geographical area, because you have Indian festivals, you have French festivals, and among French and among Indian festivals, you have the festivals from Odisha, from UP, from Bengal, from Assam, and in France you have festivals from Brittany, from Bretagne, from Normandy, from Alsace, and from various other provinces. But today, I am going to talk about a festival which should be envisaged, which should be looked at in that extensive, in that expansive, in that extensive horizon or purview of the French language, which I would like to mean that I don't know whether I have been sufficiently clear that when we talk about French festivals, which had originated on the French soil, they express the culture, the cultural wealth, the traditions, the heritage of France. But since French language and culture, it went beyond the frontiers of France, and established itself very dominantly and in a very solid way on other soil. So there are also various festivals, developed around that imported culture, imported language. That's what I want to mean. And when we talk about Panaf of 1969 in Algiers, in Algeria, it is such a festival. There are many others in Africa, and we do not have the time to go into it, which evolved around the French language and culture. But probably Panaf 1969 was, I think, one of the major festivals which in fact grew, which developed, although there were only two editions, one in 1969 and another in 2009, so after a gap of almost 45 years. These two editions of Panaf, Festival Panaf, Pan-African Festival of Algiers. Now, well, before we go into the details of how it took place, what are the events and which are the personalities, artists, and which were associated, who are associated with the festival, let me give you some kind of background here. Now, as you know that 1969, which means we are in 1960s, which is the decade of decolonization in Africa. Now, this decolonization, as you know, that any decolonization, as you know, that liberating oneself from the colonial domination, this decolonization takes impetus, gathers momentum during many years. It's not like that. That suddenly some kind of revolt, some kind of rebellion, some kind of resistance to colonial rule. It is born suddenly. It takes place, and it's not like that. It takes years, decades, sometimes centuries to gather momentum. Now, this independentist movements, which ultimately in various countries in Africa, which will lead to decolonization. In fact, it started in the aftermath of the Second World War, where the then superpowers, the world superpowers such as British, French, German, all these countries, in fact, they were, in fact, they lost their power. They had lost their former glory, their former power in terms of economy, in terms of military might, and so on and so forth, because Europe was completely devastated. Europe was the main theater of war. Although the war spread all around, but Europe was the epicenter. So that was the most of the suffering, the most of the devastation took place in Europe. So the countries which were very powerful in 19th century, who were the instrumental behind the Industrial Revolution, ultimately they lost their old glories. And maintaining such big overseas colonies financially wasn't paying any dividend to them, and they decided to depart. In spite of of course they wanted to be there, but probably their financial and economic condition didn't allow them to do. So that's why as you know that the English, they departed earlier than the French. They departed from India in around the end of the 1940s, and French, they took 10-15 years more to decolonize their erstwhile colonies. Although in 1960s, in Africa, when you talk about Africa, we see that many African countries were still living under colonial rule, such as, for example, country like Angola, Mozambique, which were under Portuguese rule, Namibia under German colonial rule. When the French colonies were liberated, were decolonized, even after that decolonization of French colonies, these countries which I named, like Angola, Namibia, they were still living under colonial rule. Even though British had colonies in Kenya, for example. Tanzania was another country where now the Gen Z generation is staging mass protests, was under the Portuguese rule. So it's not that Africa wasn't fully decolonized. French, they decided to leave. Most of the French colonies would be decolonized in 1960, to be precise. But Algeria, for example, will take 2 more years. 62, because Algeria has never been considered as a colony by the French. It was a territory, French territory, like you have territoire d'outre-mer, overseas territory, in France, in Polynesia, in Nouvelle Caledonia, places like this. So that was the situation. So this from the end of the Second World War, these independentist movements, gathered momentum. And as you know, in case of Algeria, there was a political organization called FLN, Front de Libération Nationale, FLN, which was spearheading the independentist movement. And later on, when Algeria became independent after a very bloody colonial war between the French army under General de Gaulle. Although General de Gaulle was the French president who was favorable to the idea of giving independence to all these countries, because he understood the reality, the economic reality, the political reality. The economic reality, as I just mentioned, that economic reality was that it was not cost effective, in fact, for countries like France and other European countries to maintain their overseas colony. And politically also, de Gaulle was quite, had a clear-sighted person, and he understood that since this aspiration to independence was becoming stronger and stronger, it won't be possible to face the resistance of those who participated very actively in the independentist movement, and ultimately they had to leave. So he understood that, and that's why he in fact thought of a kind of transition by introducing a particular legislation called Loi Cadre, Loicadre. Loi Cadre, the essential significance of Loi Cadre is giving the African, I'm talking about Africa only, because most of the French colonies were there. The African people in the colonies a democratic voice. So they would be having the liberty to choose their representatives who would be sitting in the Assemblée Nationale, in French Assembly in Paris. So which will be their aspirations, their needs, etc. Their in fact all sorts of needs and urgencies would be debated and discussed in French National Assembly, and the political decisions will be taken to alleviate, to look into those problems. So General de Gaulle, thought of that Loi Cadre, which would, make possible, make the expression of, what should I say, that the democratic aspirations, aspirations of the African people possible through that, through the promulgation, through the introduction of that Loi Cadre. Okay, so but that would be a transition ultimately, and also General de Gaulle, he thought that Africans were not yet prepared to prendre en main leur propre destin, means take into their hand their own destiny, to be master of their own destiny. In other terms, to manage themselves, to govern their countries themselves, because they didn't have that political maturity yet. So that's why that kind of assistance from France, from their erstwhile colonial masters would be necessary, so that that kind of political maturity ultimately develops, and the development of that political maturity ultimately would give the full liberty to the African political leadership, who would in turn be able to govern themselves, their countries. So that was the idea behind the Loi Cadre. Okay, so now you see, this is in this kind of scenario, in this kind of context, that decolonization was taking place. Ultimately, in case of Algeria, as I told you, that after 7-8 years of bloody colonial war, civil war, many people, lakhs of people died, both on both sides, on French as well as the Algerian sides, and ultimately Algeria was decolonized. And this PANAF, this festival, it would be organized 7 years, almost 62 and 69. So 7 years after 7 years of Algerian independence, and by that time, even the political regime in Algeria also changed, because the first elected president of Algeria, Prime Minister of Algeria, will be Ben Bella. So Ben Bella will be, when the festival was taking place, he would be replaced by his defense minister Houari Boumediene, who was the defense minister as well as the military chief, I believe. So who would be staging a military coup and replace Ben Bella. So even the Algerian internal politics also would undergo a transition, would change by the time the African this festival of Africa was taking place in 1969. So that's why that even that internal political scenario in Algeria had changed by that time, and Ben Bella, the first president, would be replaced by the second ruler of the country, Houari Boumediene. Houari, Houari, Houari Boumediene. Okay, so so therefore, we have to keep in mind, first of all, this context of the decolonization, and then, of course, the internal, political change, which happened in Algeria. Although, I'm saying that internal political change happened in Algeria, but as far as political ideology is concerned, Ben Bella and Boumediene, they belong to the same party, which was Front de Libération Nationale, FLN, which was like the Congress in India, the party which was very closely associated with the independentist movement, and which ultimately, was instrumental in bringing about independence of Algeria. Okay. So the same party was ruling, but as you know, the contradictions within the party, were so acute that ultimately some kind of regime change happened. But that didn't, in fact, erase and efface the kind of ideological orientation which we saw at the time of the Algerian independence. It was the same kind of political and ideological orientation which was continuing at that time. So in this kind of scenario, that Festival Culturel Pan-Africain d'Alger, the cultural festival, Pan-African Festival of Algiers, took place in 1969. And you know that in that festival, Algeria, in fact, posited itself, displayed itself as the epicenter of all other, African, independentist movements which were raging in various parts of Africa. For example, in South Africa, the resistance, the movement against the apartheid regime, which was going on, and Algeria wanted to give leadership to all those, to all these, festivals, to all these, movements, independentist movements at that time, and so much so that people like Che Guevara, that Bolivian and then Bolivian leader who would be migrating to Cuba and who would be taking a very key role in Cuban Revolution. Although he died, he was killed and he died prematurely. And then Che Guevara, in fact, he would also try to participate very actively in various kinds of independentist movements in 50s and 60s in Africa, and particularly his close association with in Congo is something which all historians would recall, and his association with the with a community, with a tribe called Simba in Congo. Che Guevara, you should be knowing, at least you have heard the name of Che Guevara, a revolutionary leader like Fidel Castro in Cuba, like yeah, of course, in our country, Nehru, Nasser in Egypt, etc. So they were all contemporaries. So in fact, later on, Che Guevara died, and Fidel Castro and others, Nehru, Nasser, they would be organizing the non-alignment movement ultimately. That we do not either belong to the American lobby, not to the Soviet lobby, but we are non-aligned, independent. Although the non-alignment was more on papers, because most of the countries in the era of Cold War was either affiliated to America, United States, or Soviet Union. Okay. So festival Pan-African Cultural Festival of Algeria would take place in that kind of political and international political environment. And by that time also we should mention that the Indochina War, which almost coincided with the Second World War, would be a very inspiring fact, because in the Indo-Chinese War, probably the defeat of the French army in the hands of the Vietnamian Indo-Chinese rebellions in Bien Phu, a place called Bien Phu in 1959, would inspire, in fact, the Algerian revolutionaries, the Algerian independentists, to spearhead their own movement of liberation. So, as I told you, that in the aftermath of the Second World War, this new the signs of these new political changes, very radical political changes, and which was in fact a kind of transition from the old colonial rule to to a decolonized world was taking place. And the festival and the historical context of the Pan-African Festival of Algeria was that kind of international political environment. Okay. Now, this Pan-Africanism, what is Pan-Africanism? As you know, Pan-Africa. Pan-Africa means, across Africa. Pan means across. Now, this Pan-African, the movement of Pan-Africanism, in fact, it was even earlier than the movement of, the negritude. Negritude, you are all familiar with this word, with this expression, particularly. Not only the students of French like us, but also, any student who are studying the post-colonial theories, negritude is something which expression which you come across, and the definition of negritude and the characteristics of negritude movements. So Pan-Africanism is even earlier than negritude movement. It inspired, in fact, negritude movement to a large extent. Whereas negritude movement, it originated basically in France, but Pan-Africanist movement, it originated in Britain, in England, because England was the superpower at that time. England was the most important colonial power, so therefore many people from the colonized countries, they migrated for various reasons. One of the main reasons of the migration was, the recruitment of the African, the Kenyans, the Algerians, the people from High Volta, which is now known as Burkina Faso, Mali, all these countries, Senegal. They would be recruited in French or British army. So when the First World War, even the Second World War were happening, French army or the British army would be, in British army there would be Gorkha regiment from India. So it would be constituted by the soldiers, coming from these countries. Because British and the French, they wanted to have less casualties of the French, so they recruited massively, out of these, colonized people, so that they become whenever it was inevitable, the first victims of the warfare. Okay. So one of the major reasons of that migration was, the war and the massive recruitment out of recruitment in British or the French army among the colonial people. But there were other reasons as well, economic reasons, because many intellectuals, they went to England, they went to France for their higher studies, and there, since the intellectuals normally they are very sensitive people, they didn't want to live under the colonial and the oppressive colonial rule, and they in fact wanted to liberate their countries, and in fact spearhead the independentist movement. So many of these independentist movements, these aspirations, in fact, were born um, in countries like France and England. So Pan-Africanism, following that pattern, was born in England, and and it was Africans, it was Asians, Latino Americans, and Americans. As it was an amalgamation of all the races, all the countries. So Pan-Africanism is that, and there, in fact, Africans, they wanted to see Africa as a country which is bound together by these links of brotherhood, fraternity, because Africa suffered the same kind of losses, same kind of what should I say, same kind of sufferings in the hands of the colonizers, be it English, be it Portuguese, be it Spanish, or be it French. So as far as the sufferings of the African were concerned, it was of the same nature. So that's why that kind of common suffering bound them together, and Pan-Africanism focused on these common sufferings of the Africans. Okay, and it had in various places, in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, in Senegal, Dakar, in Nigeria. So after that original conference, which was held in London, and over the years, in all these places, in all these countries, on these African capitals, the later chapters of later conferences of Pan-Africanism took place. And of course, Algeria, Algiers, the capital of Algeria, being one of the very prominent centers where Pan-Africanist leaders, they used to meet together, hold discussions, to think on, to deliberate on the future course of their movements. Okay, so that's why when Algeria it became independent, because 1969 means Algeria is an independent country, but there were many countries I know, like I mentioned just now, countries like Namibia, Angola, they were still living under the colonial rule. So Algeria wanted to give leadership to all other, independentist movements which were going on, which were continuing in this country. So Pan-African Festival was a rallying point, because Pan-African Festival, during Pan-African Festival, the Algerian government of Wari, Boumediene, they invited all the revolutionary leaders, including Nelson Mandela at that time. Nelson Mandela was a young, not young, but he was a very active member of the African National Congress, which was resisting against the apartheid regime, and Algerian government, was giving all kinds of support in terms of ideological support, of course, then of course financial logistic support to all these leaders who were in fact who needed resources, both financial and ideological resources from other international quarters, in order to strengthen their own movement. So Nelson Mandela also, he came and he participated in that festival. Okay, and the festival started in 21 July 1969 with a very big rally. Almost 2 lakhs of people participated in that procession, and it was a very big kind of event, and which was recorded live. And then, at that time there was no scope of live streaming. Of course, we didn't have had that technology at that time, but it was filmized and recorded, and then it was kind of used as a propaganda all over Africa. I mean, all over the world, in fact, to as an expression of the aspirations of the Africans who aspired, who wanted their independence, who wanted their autonomy, and so on. Okay, so there were, in fact, I would name two what do you call two artists whose performance was absolutely glittering and impressed everybody. One of them was Miriam Makeba from, again, South Africa, from the land of Nelson Mandela. And Makeba, in fact, Miriam Makeba, she presented a song which begins with, Je suis libre en Algérie. I am free in Algeria. I'm not free in my own country, but I'm free in Algeria. So it's a vibrant ode. It's a vibrant, it's a vibrant dedication to the liberation of the African people, and of course, to the Algerian people in that epoch, in that period, which was extremely politically, extremely charged. And and Algeria being the country which supported all the combats which were going on to liberate African from the colonial rule at that period. And the singer Miriam Makeba would be given the Algerian nationality so that she can live freely, she can leave the country, come back as she wanted. So giving her the Algerian passport, giving her the Algerian citizenship at that country. And in this context also, I would like to mention about another very important international political organization, which was known as BPP, Black Panthers Party in America, which had a very important representation during that festival. And Black Panthers Party, if you know the history of Black Panthers Party, Black Panthers Party was created in California, in Oakland, this city called Oakland, in order to protest against the police brutalities against the black people. Okay, and Black Panthers, Panther is a very ferocious, aggressive animal. So their politics was very aggressive. So they wanted to combat the aggressivity, the white aggressivity with the black aggressivity. So that's why very soon, this Black Panthers Party was outlawed, declared to be illegitimate. And many of the leaders, they will have to leave America. And in fact, Algeria would give them political asylum at that country, because Algeria was at that time, it could establish itself as a country of political asylum to those who were politically persecuted because of this kind of revolutionary ideas. I spoke about Che Guevara. I spoke about Nelson Mandela. And there is Black Panthers Party. There was a very important leader called Eldridge Cleaver, who also came to Algeria and who was in exile, who was already in exile in Cuba, but who later came to Algeria and a kind of embassy of the Black Panthers Party, which for the Algerian government represented In fact, the American people of that country, Black American people, they opened a kind of Algeria American center, Centre America, in Algiers, where this Black Panther leadership would often meet. They would often meet with each other, and within themselves, and they would meet also the Algerian political leadership in that American center, Centre America. So this was a kind of relationship, political relationship, which was building during that time, during the time of that festival. So as you know that in what kind of political scenario, now you understand the festival was taking place. There was another white American singer called Archie Shepp. ARCHIE, and Shepp, SHEPP, Shepp. He was a jazz star at that time in America, Archie Shepp. So he came with his musicians, and along with the Tuareg, Bedouin, the Tuareg, the nomads in the Saharan Africa, in Sahara, in Africa, in Tuaregs, tribes, Bedouins. So with the Bedouin and the Tuareg musicians, the American jazz musicians would present together their performance. And by, it was a kind of fusion. You have, today we live in the era of musical fusions, with the Eastern and Western style. They fuse with each other, they mingle with each other, and there is fusion between these two apparently contradictory traditions. So the American jazz tradition, because the jazz tradition was also a tradition which came from the American blacks, and then the Arab traditions like Tuareg, Bedouins, and they were people of Arabic origin. They speak Arabic language. So these two traditions, they met each other, and this fusion musical performance was presented. And Archie Shepp would be invited to the southern Algerian cities like Tamanrasset and other. Tamanrasset is a southern Algerian in the middle of the Saharan oasis, so in the southern part of, which is in the heart of the Sahara, the musical performances would be organized. And Archie Shepp, he's famous in one of the lines of the phrase of his song that we are black and we have come back. We are black and we have come back. We have come back to Africa. We are black and we have come back. So this epitomizes the essence of that music. Okay. So the Tuareg musicians, they would invite Shepp and his musicians, jazz musicians, to the deserts, to the camps in the deserts, and they would perform. And Archie Shepp would define, would characterize this experience as the most profound experiences of his life. Okay. Now, there would be some kind of manifesto which would be created during the festival. The manifesto of the independent Africa, the Africa which was striving to, bridge the gap between the people, between the languages in Africa, and to come together against the common colonial rule. The colonial rule was imposed by various European countries, but what was common was, as I told you, that oppression, that repression, the injustice. So they came together through the participation in that festival by inviting all the revolutionary figures, the musicians, the theater personality, like it is the film directors, and inviting them to use their cultural medium for the liberation of the people. Okay, and it was also a kind of forum which wanted to, in fact, build up a common kind of economic platform, because as it was noticed that as I consulted various documents, I saw that only 1% of the external trade was happening with the African countries as far as Algeria is concerned. Algeria was conducting only 1% of its external trade with the African countries, where the 2/3 of its external trade was being conducted with the European countries, particularly with France. So there was a completely, what do you call, disequilibrium as far as this trade relationship was concerned. So this festival was used also as an occasion to build up that economic cooperation, so that a closer economic, closer economic cooperation could be envisaged and could be foreseen through this, through various forum and political leadership which should meet during the festival. Okay,
Sir,
so in that,
sorry.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. If, please wind up within 5 minutes. We are running out of time.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So all these kinds of cooperation, cultural cooperation, economic cooperation, cooperation in the domain of film, theater was happening. Now at the end, I would like to mention that this festival was not completely free from from controversies as well. Now, what was the controversy? Controversy was mainly from Leopold Sédar Senghor, who wanted to, in fact, who in 1966, who had already organized a World Festival of the Negro Arts. So he wanted to divide into, he wanted to see Africa divided divided on the one hand between the black race and the Arab race. This kind of, at least the critics of Leopold Sédar Senghor, they thought that Senghor, he wanted to divide Africa into these two parts, and that was unfortunate. And in fact, Senghor was not invited to Algeria, since he did not invited the Algerian and other Arab leaders to this World Festival to Negro Arts. During that occasion, the Arab leaders, many of the Arab leaders were not invited to Senegal. So that was a major controversy which was going on. So in spite of all these positive things, there is one negative thing which I can mention. And well, Senghor himself, and then another political personality called Sékou Touré, from from Guinea, the leader of Guinea, president of Guinea at the time. They, in fact, Sékou Touré particularly, he in fact acted as a mediator, so that this controversy doesn't go out of control, and so that Africa doesn't sort of project a negative image to the outer world. But ultimately, of course, all these differences were sealed. It was managed, but it remained as a major controversy, which a little bit tarnished the image of that festival. Okay. So I think I can end here, and in the conclusion, I can say that Algerian, that festival, it represented that kind of cementing effect, which wanted to bind all the African nations together, and wanted to present a united front. And by that time, organizations of United Africa, it came into also existence as a political entity, and through that entity, the festival of Algeria, festival of Pan-African Festival of Algeria, wanted to present to the world that struggle against colonial rule by presenting a kind of image of solidarity, image of fraternity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this insightful session on Pan-African Cultural Festival 1969, the celebration of post-colonial world and Pan-African movement. Thank you so much, sir. Participants, if you have any question, you can ask. Participants who are in offline mode, you can ask the question. Online participants as well as offline participants, if you have any question, please ask.
I have a question.
Yes, Sonata.
Yeah, sir, as you mentioned, Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, like they are great revolutionaries. So, do you feel like we Indians need to imbibe the qualities of the French citizens? Like,
Of course, yeah.
their national anthem, like it states "Aux citoyens formez-vous battre." So, if we see in the Indian context, like we mentioned great words such as in the preamble, like equality, fraternity, and all that comes from the French Revolution. But when we see the reality, like none of these are followed by the peoples of the country. So, do you think we as citizens, like "Aux citoyens formez-vous battre"?
Yes, I think all the people who want positive changes. Revolution is of course change towards a positive change, positive kind of transition. Yeah, people like Fidel Castro, people like Che Guevara, of course they have their own political ideology, they have their own kind of politics, which may not be acceptable to all, but their dedication, their commitment, their engagement in that kind of revolutionary politics would always be an example for the entire world to follow. And those who are in need of that kind of transition, that change, would always follow them as the luminaries, which whose example should be emulated. Yeah. Of course.
Like, for example, like the Bengalis, like from Raja Ram Mohan Rao to Subhash Chandra Bose and all, like they somehow brought great changes in Bengal and all over the India. So from that perspective also, like today's citizens, like not like that. Like they don't like they let injustice happen to them, and then don't know their rights and
all these names which are mentioned, they are icons, they are icons, and from time to time when we celebrate their birthday, we are reminded of their examples, and those examples are re-inspire us and prompt us to engage ourselves, also to commit ourselves to a kind of action, positive action. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Any more questions? You can post in the chat box if you have any questions. Sir, I think we don't have any more questions. So
Okay, fine. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Okay, so we have come to the end of the session, I think.
So
Thank you.
we are about to start the next session with Karan.
Okay.
Karan ma'am. Karan ma'am, are you there in this call?
I am, but you've stopped the video. You have to start it. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Okay. So Karan ma'am, our today's guest of honor, she is an Indian food writer and she received the prestigious Trophée de l'Esprit Alimentaire Award from the French government. So today she is going to talk on about French festival and food. So ma'am, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always good to talk to students, especially in India, because I find that you know, especially when you're learning about France, if you don't have, or any country, if you don't have a chance to visit that country, it becomes very difficult to place France, French, whatever you're doing in context. So my topic is French food, which is vast. A lot of people are, you know, feel that French food is all about fine dining. And to a point it is. We have fantastic food in India. We have fantastic food in China, all over Asia. But French food is known the world over. Why? My feeling is, it's an opinion, is that the French have written everything down really well. All the big French chefs, you know, from Escoffier to Carême, etc., wrote everything down. So, you know, we have it in writing in very, very clear ways. If you look at how much is written about Indian food, it's really not a lot. Some of the travelers in the Mughal times wrote things down. But after that, nothing much has been written down about Indian food. Whereas French is a fantastically fine cuisine, but it's also been documented. Secondly, you might know that after the French Revolution, a lot of the French chefs that used to work for the aristocracy all of a sudden were free. They had no jobs because there was no aristocracy. They got their heads chopped off. And therefore, they opened restaurants. They opened restaurants in Paris. They opened, I mean, there are some marvelous films to document all this. And then they went into the countryside and opened restaurants in their hometowns and home villages. And it was in this century, the company called Michelin, which was a tire company, to attract people to buy tires, to travel. It's a very long stretch, but it worked. To travel and drive to, you know, around France. One of the main things was food, because they realized that people love food in France, and they were willing to drive to those restaurants where these chefs had set up, you know, fantastic little regional restaurants for food. And so they came out with a Michelin guide, which told you about these restaurants in far off places in France. And that also shows you how important food is for the French, that they're willing to drive all the way hundreds of kilometers for basically a meal. And then it became, of course, the Michelin talked about hotels and where you could stay in those little villages and towns after you've had your fantastic meal. So there's three things I'd like to talk about today, and hopefully there will be questions. One is about the different kinds of restaurants in France. One is demystifying certain French dishes, which you always get them wrong. And one is a little bit about vegetarians and how do they cope in France with French food. So let me start with restaurants. So it's not news that the French enjoy spending time together at the dinner table, and rightly so, since France is the ultimate destination for great food and drink in Europe for sure, and the culinary legacy goes back centuries. Renowned chefs concoct traditional recipes using sophisticated techniques based on fresh, local, and seasonal produce. So let's take a look at the different types of restaurants in France that you must try if you get there, or at least have an idea. One, of course, the straight one is fine dining restaurants, the Michelin star restaurants. Now, these embody everything I've talked about, great ingredients, seasonal. They don't really look at things out of season. A lot of the produce is from their local butchers or vegetable markets, etc. And of course, beautiful restaurants with tablecloths and serviettes and great service. And this is often defined by the Michelin star. It's obviously expensive because they go to a lot of trouble to get these fine ingredients. Of course, they will have what I call posh or show-off ingredients, like you know, caviar, or they'll have, of course, there's caviar in France now, by the way. You don't have to go to the Caspian Sea for it. Foie gras, truffle, all these things are found in France today. So they're expensive ingredients, and they justify the price of the meal because of the expensive ingredients. And so great quality, great service, a special afternoon or evening out, which is important. And not just a business dinner, or it's obviously a lunch or dinner, often with family. So these are fine dining restaurants, as I said, often in the Michelin Guide, which is your gauge. They provide a certain level of service, hospitality, a menu of dishes that are just delicious, beautifully presented, and extensive and carefully selected wine list. Now, this is very important for the French because obviously they have a great wine culture, and therefore pairing of wine with the dish is very important to the French. Lots of French restaurants we can talk about. Then secondly, you have the brasserie. Now, a brasserie, very interesting, is a much more budget-friendly restaurant. They're called brasserie, or, you know, because once beer was brewed at these establishments, and brasserie means brewery. And today they're restaurants where you can expect good food, much more bustling atmosphere, not so fine dining. You can get things like steak frites, which are with steak with chips. That's a very famous brasserie dish. You can get a quiche Lorraine, you can get a coquille Saint-Jacques, which is a scallop. There are certain dishes that are very, very famous for brasseries, and they have cooks, maybe not chefs, who know how to make those dishes very well. Simple dish of asparagus with just a vinaigrette dressing. So that's something that I think everyone can visit because they're not so expensive. Then you have street food. You have things like crepe or chestnuts, which are sold on streets. Quality is still great, except you get them out of a paper cone. Patisserie and what we call viennoiserie. Now, a patisserie or a bakery product, we all know. But what is a croissant or a pain au chocolat? These are not classified as patisserie or bakery. These are classified as viennoiserie because originally they probably came from Vienna. And they are all our bakery staples that we know in India, like the croissant, the pain au chocolat, the cinnamon roll, you know, the Danish pastry even. So these are things which are butter and flour and sugar. Very bad for you, but quite delicious. French butter, by the way, is generally good butter, is unpasteurized. Many years ago, when France was getting into the EU or forming the EU, there was a thing about pasteurization of butter and cheese. And the French were so obsessed with this that they actually, French farmers marched on the Champs-Élysées to change the rule. This was a rule that was coming in from America, because as you know, everything is pasteurized in America. And they wanted the EU products to be pasteurized, and the French rode up against it and said, this is part of our culture. This is what's called art de vivre, or lifestyle. Part of the culture is unpasteurized cheeses. So they're made with unpasteurized milk, and it changes the taste completely. It doesn't last as long. For example, if you taste French bread, which is made with unpasteurized butter, the next day a baguette will go hard. Why? Because it's natural. If you look at bread that is packeted in America or in the UK and it lasts a week, that means there are lots of additives. The French generally don't use additives or anything. So pasteurization is the first step, and after that it's additives and a lot of flavors and colors and so on. So they are very, very dogmatic about their cheese. You know, the famous saying, le pain Le Vin, Le Boursin. It used to be on big ad boards all over France. So this is the triumvirate of French cuisine: bread, wine, and of course it was an ad. So it was an ad for Boursin, but it actually means cheese. So French, for the French, wine, cheese, and bread is something they have to have every day and very important to the culture. The next type of restaurant I'd like to talk about is the bistro. Now, a bistro was often a mom and pop little restaurant, usually seating very few people, often with, you know, your gingham, your red and white check tablecloths. That's the image. And they serve dishes often which you could make in advance, like your coq au vin or cassoulet or something of the region. If melon was in season, they would serve you half a melon filled with port. They would serve you a simple main course that had maybe had been made a little bit in advance because it was a stew, and a simple dessert. You know, it could be anything, even just a creme caramel. So simple food, you would have what they call a TDH or table d'hôte menu, where you would choose from a couple of starters, a couple of main courses, and a couple of dessert. And it would be a set price, 20 euros. In the old days, it used to be francs. And you would often find bistros in Paris, but more often in regions, and often when you're traveling from one region to another, you would often get bistros on the way. You would go off the main road, heard about this little bistro somewhere, and sat down for lunch, a simple lunch that was often family driven, the restaurant or the bistro. And you'd have, you know, the owner of the restaurant, one would be in the kitchen, one would serve. Very important to French culture. Then you've got gourmet style bistro restaurants, which have come up now all over the place, where it's got a little, it's not quite the restaurant, but it's more expensive than the bistro. Then you've got something which has come up and very important for vegetarians, is the crêpe pancake or the crêperie. Now, crêperies have come up. They were always in Normandy and Brittany because crêpe are part of the culture there. And they're very important, for example, for vegetarians, because, especially if you eat egg, because often crepes are vegetarian. You have sweet crepes and savory crepes. You could get a savory crepe with ham and cheese, or with spinach, or with mushrooms, and a sweet crepe with just sugar and butter, or with apple. And often crepes, because this originated in Normandy, often crepes were served with a glass of cider. And I was in Normandy, oddly enough, last year. And when I went to a couple of the restaurants, very interestingly, they don't serve wine, maybe a glass of white, but generally they serve cider. Why? Because apples are grown in that region. So it's not like you think all of the regions of France are wine regions. They're not. They're only wine regions when wine is made in that region. So in Normandy, which is northwest of France, it's cider. And I went to a very interesting pairing of different types of cheese of the region, Reblochon, Camembert, etc., with different types of cider. So if it was a very strong cheese, you'd have a dry cider. If it was a more kind of fruity, what should I say, soft cheese, they'd serve it with a slightly more fruity cider. Very, very interesting. Then the last one I'd like to talk about is the bouillon. Now, in Paris especially, you had something called bouillon, and bouillon means soup kitchen or soup. So these were working class places where people came in their lunch hour, especially, or after work. Working class people who worked in factories and worked in local sweatshops and not industry, but more crafts. They would work in the leather industry or so on in and around Paris, and they would come to their local bouillon to eat lunch. And these were, again, simple places. And they now, of course, have got a bit touristy because there isn't so many workshops in the center of Paris anymore. It's too expensive. But these bouillons continue, and there's one called Bouillon Chartier, which I go to whenever I'm there. It's a fabulous place. The waiters are great. They dress up in their white shirts and their waistcoats. Very simple places with benches, some seats, but benches. And they serve local wine, inexpensive, local dishes, whatever is around. Not super, super quality, but super, super cheap, which is great if you want an introduction to French food. The other thing I'd like to talk about is French dishes. Now, when you find French food in restaurants, in five-star hotels, they're often not what they are supposed to be. So I wanted to just go through that. So for example, a gratin. A gratin is a dish. It could be potatoes, it could be pasta, it could be anything with a cheese sauce or a bechamel sauce made properly with a roux and with cheese on top, and it goes into the oven and it gets a nice brown crust. That is a gratin. And it's very, very important for vegetarians because this is a completely egg-free dish. So if you get an asparagus gratin or a potato gratin, this is something you can go for. It's not just a simple white sauce. It's a bechamel sauce with good cheese on top that grates and that gives you that, it melts and gives you that crust. Vichyssoise, everyone talks about vichyssoise. Vichyssoise, pronounced vichyssoise, not vichyssoise, is a cold, well, it could be a hot or cold leek and potato soup. It's, I believe, not invented in France. It's actually an American dish. But it is very important to the French cuisine because you can drink it cold or hot. Salade niçoise. Everyone talks about salade niçoise. What is salade niçoise? It's a salad from Nice, very, very simply. Why is it important? Because in Nice, you get great little black olives. You get good lettuce all over France. You get great tomatoes. It's Mediterranean. Remember, Nice is in the south of France. It's Mediterranean. It's on the Mediterranean Sea. So the vegetables are fantastic. So you've got peppers, bell peppers, tomatoes, olives, all local. Tuna fish is local because there's a port in Nice, and that's one of the big, it's a big fish, but also the most popular fish in the south of France is tuna. And it's not canned, of course, and they just slightly grill it or they fry it, still pink in the middle, and they serve that with the salade niçoise. So that's why it's called salade niçoise. It's from Nice. A baguette, everybody knows, it's the long, what they call the French stick or the French bread. A quiche Lorraine. Now, a quiche Lorraine is a quiche from a place called Lorraine, which is in the northeast of France. Alsace and Lorraine border Germany. And what is popular there is the pork products. So you have a quiche with ham and cheese, and it's gratinated. And of course, it's got egg. But if you do eat egg, then you often get quiche not from Lorraine, but other quiche with épinards, which is spinach or mushroom. So if you eat egg, that's a good option for you as a vegetarian. Crepe, we've talked about. You can get sweet or savory. Omelette. Now, an omelette in France is quite different from Indian omelettes, which are usually quite hard, and we like them with masala and with onions and so on. So a French omelette is very fluffy. And what a good restaurant should do is they whisk up the white separately to the yolk. So the yolk is whisked, and then the white is completely whisked till it forms peaks, much like a meringue. And then it's folded in to the eggs, and then you make an omelette out of it. So you get this enormous fat, light omelette. A souffle. So we often talk about souffle, which rise when you put it into the oven. So a souffle is basically the same thing. It's a white sauce, and then you add the white of egg, which is whipped up to a peak. You fold it in gently. It could be with cheese, it could be with salmon, Put it in the oven, of course, it rises because of the white of egg. And it's very, very dramatic at a table. Creme brulee. Now, creme brulee is a bit like a custard or a creme caramel. The only difference is it's made out of cream and not milk. And it's got a sugar on top that you basically caramelize with a torch. Tornados rossini. This is a very famous dish. It's a fillet of steak, which is topped with foie gras and a slice of truffle. And it's named after the Italian composer Rossini, who once ordered it in a Parisian restaurant. So they found it such a fantastic dish that they called it after him. Ratatouille, every vegetarian should know, because in a lot of restaurants in France, unfortunately, they give you this wretched ratatouille a lot. I was in Morocco lately, and poor vegetarians get tagine every day. So similarly in France, the poor vegetarian often gets ratatouille, which is basically, again, a dish from the Mediterranean or south of France, a lot of it in Nice, along the Côte d'Azur. It's basically peppers, tomatoes, onions, garlic, and a bengan or aubergine. All of these things are cut up, put into a big pot and cooked together. That's it, and some herbs. The delicious thing as an accompaniment, but a bit boring if you're vegetarian and you have it on your plate every day. Lobster thermidor. Now, again, I think that's an American dish, but it's often served in France. It's basically a grilled lobster with a sauce that is made out of white wine. It's like a bechamel with white wine and cheese, and it's gratinated. Bouillabaisse. Now, the legendary seafood stew from Marseille. It has an assortment of fish, mussels in a tomato broth. Why tomato? Because it's from the south of France, again, from Marseille. And traditionally, there was a fish called the scorpion fish, which is called rascasse in French. And it's an ugly kind of red fish, and that has a lot of flavor. And that would go, and these are all cheap fish that would come to the port in Marseille. These are not expensive fish. They're not sole and lobster and so on. So these are all everyday inexpensive fish. They go into a pot with a tomato broth and lots of garlic and saffron, and that is your bouillabaisse. It's served with something even better, something called a rouille, which is a kind of slightly spicy, not spicy by our level, but chili pepper, which is made into an emulsion like a mayonnaise, but it's not, with oil, no egg, but with oil and flavors and so on. Then the famous onion soup. So the famous onion soup is, of course, all over France. It's basically onions which are browned, a bit of caramel in the pan first, and then you brown the onions till they're really dark in color, put in a very strong beef stock usually, and it's finished off with little slices of bread with Gruyere, and it goes in the oven, so you get a nice toasty top, and then this delicious onion soup inside. If you're vegetarian, you're not so bothered about stock, that's great for you. Otherwise, if it's pre-ordered, you can ask for vegetarian stock. It's of course different. And then you've got dishes, which are bistro dishes, like duck à l'orange, which is duck made with an orange sauce, has a little bit of alcohol. By the way, if you don't drink alcohol, don't worry about French food, because they do have a lot of alcohol in their dishes. This was often because when these bistro dishes like coq au vin and duck à l'orange were made, they didn't necessarily get, this was after the war, they didn't necessarily get fantastic ingredients. And so they used alcohol to make these delicious sauces, which made up for the slow cooked dishes, which often the protein was not of great quality. So the alcohol gave you this wonderful sauce. So you've got bœuf bourguignon with red wine, you've got coq au vin, which has red wine, you've got the duck à l'orange has Blanc Marnier. So all of these things actually added and made French food what it was, but it was actually, the reason was it was born out of the fact that there weren't, especially after the war, great quality products. Steak au pois, pepper steak, that's definitely a French dish. And it's made with the juices from the pan, with a little bit of cream, pepper, of course, sometimes black pepper, sometimes green peppercorns, and always, the steak is always flambéed with cognac, so that's another one. Sole Meunière, if you've seen the Julia Childs film, she keeps talking about how amazing the Sole Meunière is, basically because of the amazing amount of butter. And I always say something with so much butter, garlic, and parsley will taste great on cardboard. It doesn't matter because it's such a fantastic sauce. But can you get better? Butter, garlic, and parsley, really. So that's a little bit about French food. About the poor vegetarian in France. So I have to say that being a vegetarian in France, there are vegetarian options like leek vinaigrette, which I love, and of course all the desserts and the cheese. But the main courses are often meat-centric, even today. And you have to go to maybe a vegetarian restaurant or you know, a restaurant that specializes in vegan food. And often you don't want to do that. You want to go to a French restaurant and have good food, not necessarily go to a, you know, be marginalized and go to a vegetarian or a healthy vegan restaurant. So there are a few options available. And while the numbers of vegetarians are growing, and some exciting innovative vegetarian dishes are coming about, a lot of the Michelin restaurants will still be are slow on this, and you have to order vegetarian dishes in advance. A meal without meat, fowl, or fish is still considered a bit bizarre. I was at a French restaurant, Mauro Cologreco's court in Bangkok recently. And of course, they have foie gras and this and that, and they have great seafood in Bangkok. He is the man who was #1 in the world for his restaurant called Mirazur in Menton in France. And now he's opened up, you know, restaurants all over the world. And still, there might be one or two things with beetroot and this and that. But if you are vegetarian, you have to pre-order. You cannot assume you're going to have a vegetarian tasting menu. So a cheese souffle is something you could possibly order. A quiche if you eat egg. But you must specify what sort of vegetarian you are, because a lot of restaurants think vegetarian is fish. So you must specify that you don't eat fish, and then you must specify if you eat egg or not. There will be, as I've said, very little on the printed menu, so you will have to ask for something to be made specially. This is not a difficult request and should challenge any decent chef. So don't be afraid to ask. Starters are not usually a problem. You'll find an interesting salad. You'll find with interesting dressings using like raspberry vinegar or heady mustard. And the French do make some excellent soup, which is called potage au bouillon. Watch out for consommé, which is a clear soup, which sometimes can contain meat or chicken stock. Soups may contain something called petit légume, which is a baby vegetable, or champignon, which is mushroom, of which there are a stunning variety and which can be a meal in themselves. Other delicacies to start with include fresh artichaut, which are artichoke, fleur de courgette, which is pumpkin flour, which they often stuff with a light cheese, which is delicious. They're bright yellow flowers. We often see them here in India as well, but we don't do anything with them. A bit like a bhajia, really. And there's nothing quite like thick white batons of fresh asparagus served with a warm hollandaise sauce. If you don't eat eggs, ask them to replace the hollandaise sauce with melted butter or olive oil. You may see the words gâteau in a main course, or a terrine or a pâté. These are traditionally meaty preparations, but chefs now are making excellent vegetarian ones. They range from a simple medley of vegetables, baked or steamed in a mold, to real fantasies with truffles, walnuts, and cheese. So these are savory gâteaux, not sweet ones. For something more familiar and more substantial, you will always find a gratin, which I've talked about, or vegetables with cheese, to the more familiar macaroni gratin. They will normally contain an excess of white sauce that you may be used to in India. But gratin in France are usually relatively dry, topped with either a strong cheese like Parmesan, melted butter, or breadcrumbs. Roasted vegetables are another wonderful vegetarian option which you will find. Those who don't eat egg in any form should ask what goes into the dessert before ordering, as a great many are made with egg, things like souffle, creme brulee, and mousse. You could enjoy something called a feuilleté, which is layers of filo pastry, usually with a filling of fruit and cream, but avoid them with creme pâtissière. As you know, creme pâtissière has egg. And if you spot beignets, which are little French fried fritters, go for it. Don't forget to splurge on the cheese board and breads, which are totally vegetarian. Ask the sommelier, the wine expert, for his advice on the appropriate wines to accompany your various courses, and you'll be a happy bunny in France, I assure you. So that's what I'd like to talk about in terms of food, the kind of restaurants, the kind of dishes, and vegetarian options. And now I would love to leave it open for questions. I'm sure there are many, and I'd like to answer those, if that's okay.
Yes, dear participants, if you have any question, you can ask offline participants as well as online participants. No, she can come here because so that ma'am can see you. Yes.
Yeah,
sir.
or you can just do it on a chat. I'm happy to answer it.
No, yeah. Come
I
here.
think one question that always comes up is why there aren't more French restaurants in India.
Yes.
And that is something very, I think when I was working with Sopexa, which was a French organization that when I won the award, I did a lot of work with Sopexa, and they were part of the French Ministry of External Affairs, and they were in charge of promoting French food and produce around the world. And in India, they always wanted to open French fine dining. And I said, don't. Open brasseries, open bistros, which are far more accessible in terms of price and produce. With fine dining, the problem is you need those ingredients, and it's very difficult to get them in India.
Yes. Ma'am, we have one question. Yes.
Sure.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
I'm Sheeta Mishra from BA English first year. So I have one question that how has the like we got to know so much about the different dishes and different gourmet foods about French. So how has the philosophy of French cooking evolved over time? Because nowadays, if we how you talked about how not much of the French cuisine is like common in India. So simple food items and simple French dishes are like a gourmet dish in India right now. So how that over time they have evolved? How can we know about that?
I think French food, the French have marketed their food very well, and they've marketed it as something upmarket. And therefore, even simple things like quiche is become an upmarket thing. Also, it's become upmarket because we consider European food upmarket in India for some reason. We also consider it upmarket because some of the ingredients for these things are very expensive. Foreign cheese is expensive. All our foreign ingredients are very expensive. Our Indian cheese is okay, but it's not an everyday thing for most people. Foreign cheese, whether it's Italian cheese or French, you don't get French cheese. You hardly get French cheese in India. It's very expensive. And so even if you're making a simple gratin or whatever, it's considered expensive. It's considered upmarket because the ingredients are expensive. Secondly, even if you use alcohol, wine is expensive. Cognac is expensive. So I think even simple dishes have got this kind of upmarket status, even if they're simple and they're not great skill. They're what I call bistro or brasserie dishes for that reason. And also, I think a lot of French things, even a simple quiche, requires a certain amount of skill. It's simple, but it requires skill. So therefore, not everybody knows how to make them. So this mystique has come. How has it evolved? I don't think it's really evolved. I think French food is the same. Some of the dishes have evolved. Some of the restaurants have become even more fussy with lots of fancy things, very expensive around the world. But I've noticed that around the world, French food is getting less and less popular.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions? Online participants, offline participants?
Ma'am, how come French food isn't bland like other European cuisines?
Can you repeat that? I can't hear it.
Yeah. How come French cuisine isn't bland like other European cuisines?
Isn't bland or is bland?
Isn't.
Do you find it not bland?
I searched up the images. I haven't tasted anything French yet.
I can't hear her.
But,
Can you repeat what she's saying?
Sonakshi, you are not clear. Please.
No, but you repeat it now. There's no point her repeating 3 times. You repeat what she's saying.
No, ma'am, it is. She's not clear. Even this side also.
Oh, okay.
My question is, how come French food isn't bland? Like I'm making this observation based on the images I just Googled.
You're making the observation?
After Googling the images.
But how do you know? If you haven't tasted it, how do you know what it tastes like?
Yeah. But by the looks of it, like I'm asking you, is it bland or is it not?
It is.
Like
By Indian standards, it would be bland. That's why I'm asking you, how do you know it's bland?
And compared to other European cuisines like Spanish or British?
No, British is completely bland. But Spanish is a bit more flavorful because it's from the Mediterranean. So there's more garlic and there's a bit of chili that they use. But by Indian standards, all European food is quite bland.
Okay.
Even if it looks lovely, but it's quite bland. I mean, I took a group just now to Morocco, which is North Africa, and there are spices in the food. There are no chili, but there's spices in the food. But people found it bland by Indian standards. And that's another reason, I think, because Asian food, not just Indian, but of course, Indian food, Thai food, Chinese, of course, for many years, is so strong and so powerful and so tasty. That is now taking over the world over. And French food is unfortunately going into remission. People still are now loving Asian flavors more. Anywhere in the world you go, there's Vietnamese restaurants and Indian restaurants and Chinese restaurants because the flavors in the East are far more powerful.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Ma'am, do we have any similarity between Indian and French dining culture?
No.
No, okay.
No, there's no similarity at all. The French eat in courses. The most similar would be something like Bengali food, which is often served in courses, but on a thali, but it will be served in courses. That would be the nearest. And French, even at home, you don't eat everything together on a plate. Even at home, you would eat a salad first. You don't necessarily change your plates at home, but you would eat a salad, you would eat a main course, you would change your plate for dessert and cheese at home. So from that point of view, no. I think there's a lot of skill in Indian food and there's a lot of skill in French food. But I think French food is far, far more simple. All you need is 3 or 4 ingredients to make a dish. No Indian dish or very few Indian dishes require 3 or 4 ingredients.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more questions? Offline
Ma'am,
participant.
I have heard of one cheese, like they make it from maggots, those insects.
No, they don't make the cheese
Like,
from the
I
maggot.
think that's Italian, and I think the French, they use some kind of rotten cheese in their pizzas or something
No,
like
they
that.
don't. That's all rubbish.
They don't? Okay.
Yeah, that's all rubbish. This must be one thing in some village, you know. But generally, no. Cheese is made with rennet. Rennet is a starter, and they make it much like you make paneer. And that's how cheese is made, with different rennet, different aging processes, different milk. This maggot thing is all rubbish. It might be in some little village somewhere.
Yeah, this maggot is not, I think, French, I think it's Italian. Like they let the maggot feed on that cheese.
Maybe,
And
and
then
but they're not eating the
it like
maggot.
that.
They will, well,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah, they will remove it. Like I saw in some documentary.
maybe, but it's not common.
Yeah.
We're talking about French food. We're not talking
Yeah,
about
right. Yeah.
The French eat very, very strong cheese. Yeah. Some of the cheese, especially with unpasteurized milk, is very, very strong. Absolutely. And they eat some funny things. They eat frog's legs. They also eat frog's legs in Goa, by the way. They eat frog's legs. They eat snails. Yeah. But they ate a lot of these things when you didn't get good quality meats, you see. During the war, when people say, oh, the French eat horse meat, they do. The Italians also eat horse meat. And they ate that during the war when there wasn't much meat available. So then they started eating horses. So often these things come out of, necessity. I read a very interesting thing this morning, nothing to do with France, but how the gentleman who started Nutella came about. And it was because during the war, there was not enough chocolate in Italy because there was a scarcity of cocoa. So what there was hazelnuts, because hazelnuts grow all over the north of Italy. So they put hazelnuts, which were very cheap, and mixed it with cocoa to make Nutella. And that became and it was bars of Nutella. You could chop the bars like a chocolate. And then they made the creamy Nutella later. But it was interesting because it was made out of a necessity that there wasn't enough cocoa. So often dishes are born out of a scarcity. Anything else that you'd like to know? You should visit France.
Any more questions? Yes, please come here. Ma'am, we have one more question.
Sure.
Introduce yourself.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm
Good morning.
from BA English Honors and Research. I have a question. Sitting here in India, where our food changes every few kilometers, I've always been fascinated about how French people take their food very seriously. But in today's day and age, where social media is reshaping how fine dining is seen, how cuisines are coming up, and how the world is changing so fast. So I wonder, how do French people balance their cuisine in such deep rooted traditions in this modern way of innovation?
There are several things that you've talked about. One, like India, where food changes, I wouldn't say every few kilometers, but it changes per region. French food also changes per region. There are cheeses which you get in Normandy which don't even reach Paris because they don't believe in sending it out of the region. They think it's going to go, it won't be the same. So I think every country is deep rooted that way, and they're very, very passionate about the fact that certain wines, every vineyard keeps wines also for themselves that they don't send out. So it's the same everywhere. So that's one. Secondly, how do they keep their tradition? Good question. I think French people patronize their own food. If you go to Paris, of course, you will find Chinese restaurants. When I studied in Paris, 90% of the restaurants were French. You went out to eat French food. You didn't go out to eat Chinese or Vietnamese or anything. There might have been a little bit of Vietnamese in a Vietnamese area where there were Vietnamese who had come in from Vietnam because it was a French colony at some point, or there would be people from Morocco who made Moroccan food, and it would be for themselves as well as the French. But these were small pockets. But the main food you got 30 years ago in Paris was French food. Now, in India, it's the same thing. We used to eat only our own food, or what I call Punjabi food in restaurants. So your tandoori chicken and your black dal and so on. But we didn't have so many foreign restaurants earlier. Now we do. So how do you keep the integrity of your tradition? By patronizing your own food. So today, still, if you go to Michelin restaurants, or you go to brasseries, or you visit France, you will see French food being served on the highway. Still, of course, you have other restaurants now in big cities. You have Japanese everywhere. You have a bit of Chinese. You have Italian. You have the pizza. But by and large, you can only keep your tradition if you patronize it and if you go to your restaurants. And that's what's happening in France. Unfortunately, less and less around the world. Because around the world, why should they patronize French? They have no obligation to patronize French food in Japan or anywhere else. So you find everything. But in France, people still eat French food. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope that answers your long question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Any more questions? Participants? Okay, so we have no questions. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
Thank you.
So we are about to end our session. I would like to invite Disha ma'am to offer vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. As we come to the close of our two-day international workshop, La France of Fête, a workshop on French food and festivals, it is my proud privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Chhattisgarh. First and foremost, I express our deepest gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Piyush Kant Pandey, sir, for his constant guidance, encouragement, and vision that inspire us to organize such meaningful academic and cultural events. Our sincere thanks also go to our respected Pro-Vice Chancellor, Madam, Professor Sumita Dave, ma'am, for her continuous support and gracious presence throughout the program. We are truly honored by the presence and participation of our distinguished speakers who made this workshop intellectually rich and engaging. We extend our heartfelt thanks to Professor Akhilesh Kumar, Team France, Dr. Deepa Chakraborty, Professor Nilanjan Chakraborty, and Ms. Karen Anand, the renowned food writer, for their enlightening talks and valuable insights into French culture, cuisine, and festivals. A special word of appreciation goes to our IT team, account section, and admin department for their seamless technical coordination and logistical support, which ensured the smooth conduction of the event. I also take this opportunity to thank my esteemed colleagues for their constant cooperation and teamwork. Dr. Shubhankar Roy, sir, HY Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Chhattisgarh. Dr. Shupana Garkun, madam. Dr. Pratyush Ranjan Pari, sir. Dr. Muhaiminul, sir. Dr. Orijit, sir. Dr. Devojyoti, sir. Dr. Bishwajit, sir. Ms. Minipriya, ma'am. And Mr. Shimanto, sir, for their dedicated efforts in making this workshop a success. Finally, my sincere thanks to all the students and participants who joined us with enthusiasm and curiosity, making the event vibrant and meaningful. As we conclude, La France of Fête, let us carry forward the spirit of learning,
collaboration, and cultural appreciation that this workshop has celebrated over the past 2 days. Thank you all. Merci beaucoup.